Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the webinar Customizing Revu for Architecture and Engineering Office Workflows. So today, a little bit of a rundown on what this is about. Obviously, time and accuracy are probably one of the most important factors when it comes to working in an office in the architecture or engineering worlds. So tailoring your tools to enhance productivity can make all the difference in meeting those deadlines, delivering results. This webinar is designed to equip you with those skills and knowledge to harness the full potential of Revu's customization features, optimizing your workflow for that efficiency. So the key highlights and the key areas are personalized efficiency, so learning how to customize your toolbars, shortcuts, templates to create seamless workflows. Streamlined collaboration, so just those techniques for standardizing markups, annotations, and communication tools, as well as precision and consistency, so the advanced options that ensure consistency in your markups and in your measurements. And then time-saving automation, so uncovering automation tips that'll simplify some repetitive tasks, freeing you up to focus on the creative and strategic aspects of your projects. So without further ado, just a little bit about us at VinZero. So VinZero, Cloud A2K, we are the branch that what we do is pretty much exclusively Bluebeam, and we've been expanding quite a bit recently. So some of the things you'll see today, like customizing those tool chests and creating Linestyles, creating hatch patterns, these are all things that we can actually help you do. So if you do see a use for a lot of this stuff today and you feel like you could use all of those tool chests, we can help you create those. We also do the usual, so we'll do training, bring you up to speed on Bluebeam, whether that's new staff or your staff that have Bluebeam but want to know more. And in general, just consulting, having a look at your documents, seeing what you're doing right and wrong. Next, just a little bit about me. I'm from an architectural background initially, so that's more what else I'll be yapping on about today, but I will be tapping into a little bit of that. But at Cloud A2K and VinZero, I've worked with a lot of engineers because Bluebeam is such a diverse tool. So a lot of this stuff is applicable to both. So a bit of experience. I was a building designer and worked a bit at an architectural firm, primarily from the Revu background, but now I've been in Bluebeam for a few years. So the agenda for today overall, the overarching theme is sort of customizing Revu, creating those new tools, creating some workflows. The first of the 4 categories will be profiles in the interface. So what you need to know, and after the need to know basics, we'll get into some more of the complicated sort of hot tips, some of the cool things you can find in your preferences. The next one is custom line styles, so just drawing lines, how it sort of works, and then actually getting into the nitty-gritty, how to customize, how to create your own line types. Then with hatch patterns, so custom hatch patterns, you can actually import those from AutoCAD, so we'll show you that at the very end. There's also a tool where you can create your own patterns within Bluebeam as well, so we'll show you that. And the last one, tool chest is probably the most complicated one, so it's more of just an intro, a little bit of a need to know. We'll show you all the basics, and then I'll show you some cool applications, some of the more advanced stuff at the end of it, just for a bit of a taste of the more complicated stuff. So for the first section, we'll start by creating profile. We'll customize the interface around us. We'll add and remove some toolbars from the area from our workspace, and then we'll go into some of the more advanced stuff in our preferences and see how some of those cool tools might be helpful. Okay, heading into review now. So what we've got here, all the basics. Starting at the top, you've got your little menus at the top here. You've also got the tabs. These tabs are probably more important. These are on the left-hand side. You select one, it'll open it up. Very obvious. On the right-hand side, these are the toolbars on this side. You can drag these along. So these ones are how Revu looks pretty typically. This is how it sort of comes out of the box. Some things you can customize in here. So start with this left-hand side with these panels. The properties panel is one that you often want to use in conjunction with these other panels. So what I'll do is just, if I click and drag this one here, I can actually allocate it to a different spot anywhere in the program. So the right-hand side, down the bottom, it can be added on, or on this left-hand side. What I'll do first is drag it, and I'll actually include this cogwheel, so it splits off the bottom. So now what I'm seeing is I've got that cogwheel, the properties panel available. I can have that open and any of these other panels at the top. So now they can both hit at the same time. a good part of this is this markups is at the bottom. If you want to have the markups open and dragged up, you're looking at it, it squishes these panels quite a bit when it's stacked like this. So what you can do is select this little arrow and it'll push that menu to the right hand side. So that way I can have my markups list open and I can still have both of these panels very visible. Let's push this back across. Another alternative is to grab this cogwheel and drag any of these panels to this right hand side so they can pop up on this side and I can have them both active at once. At the moment you can see if I've got all these things open, a panel on both sides and the markups list at the bottom, it is very crowded. There's less room to see the drawing, so I do prefer how I had it a second ago, just like this. So you can have two things at once and then the markups list at the bottom. This is probably the ideal setup for me, but it's all about sort of figuring it out what's best for you. On the right hand side as well, you've got the toolbars. At the top under tools, you can select the toolbars menu here and turn more menus on. So one at the moment you see that should always be on is the status bar. So at the moment, if I tried to place a markup like this line, you can see it is snapping to the PDF below. So it's good for taking measurements when it's snapping. But to turn that on, you need to go into the toolbars and turn the status bar on. That brings up this little bar at the bottom here and makes these ones a lot more accessible. So these buttons here, reuse markups, snap to markup, and snap to content, I turn all of those on most of the time. So if I turn these off, you can see I can actually draw anywhere, like freely. Whereas if I turn them on, it'll snap to that content, that little square will appear, and it'll hit and start from that part of the PDF. So if we're taking a measurement, for example, it'll snap to that line and snap to this top line. Another little tip while we're here, holding shift restricts you to 45-degree angles or straight lines. So if I don't hold shift, you can see I'm not guaranteed to get a straight measurement. So if I hold shift, go all the way up, it'll snap to the top, and that means I'm getting a perfect measurement. Another one of toolbars. So if I click on this toolbar here and go to toolbars, go down to alignment, I can turn another toolbar on. So if I want to turn this one on, this is a really helpful toolbar to have on pretty much all the time. You can see this one now pops up on the right hand side here and is pushed the other toolbars down. So I can easily drag this one to be wherever I want it to be. It can stack up to the side of the existing toolbars just by holding it and dragging it slightly to the left or right. Or I can have it apply to the bottom here, below and above the status bar, or again, it can be on the left hand side as well. And the top, it can be pretty much anywhere, any corner of the screen. I'm going to leave it on the right hand side, just to the side of this here. So another cool bit of the interface under the help menu is the find tools and commands. This is a really helpful little area. If you can't find something, you can't figure out what's going on, you can't find a tool, you can just search for specific tools or for help or something in this area. So I can search for lines and then the line tool will appear. I can search for cloud and then I can select either one of these if I can't find it. It also works for commands, so help, I want to align something, and all the align options will actually pop up very quickly that way as well. In the help menu as well, another little cool area is the keyboard shortcuts guide. So we'll select this one and this pops open a PDF with our shortcuts. If there's something that you are using all the time, like align center or align middle, Control-Alt-E is the shortcut for that. Dimensions, Shift-L if you're dimensioning all the time, Shift-L, I can just drop them in very quickly. These are really important to know. They can really speed things up. So if you do use something over and over and over again, and you're finding it, you're having to go through menus, right-clicking to find a command over and over, learn the shortcut and it'll make your life a lot easier. Anyway, so that's available right there. Other than that, that's the gist of it inside there. Those are pretty good. Another little one in this menu is the review tutorials. You can launch this up and it'll give you a breakdown over some of these basic functions quite easily. It's pretty helpful, including a whole little video. Yeah, that's just fun. It's good to know that. Anyway, carrying on a little bit, what we've done now, so that's the customization side of it. The next bit is the sort of cool tips and tricks in your profiles and your actual in your preferences. The first thing is profiles. So once you do have, for example, a layout like this that we are happy with, you can go into review profiles and save that profile somewhere. So I can save that to my desktop, I can save that anywhere I want, that I'll remember it. And that way, if I have to reinstall Revu, or if I want to if I want to give the profile to other people, so other people that want to use Revu, they're not that familiar with it, I can set up a profile so they only have the tools they need. You can send that profile to them this way. So I can pick the Revu one, I can export it, save it somewhere on the computer, send that file to them, they load it in, they've got the exact same interface that you do. Good way to standardize across the whole company. But on top of that, anyway, I'll show you these profiles here. These other three are advanced quantity takeoff and field issues. These come stock with Bluebeam. So just open one up for an example. You can see it rearranges the interface for us to have these different tools and other stuff available. Go back to our interface now. If we then go into our preferences, there's a few cool areas I want to show you. The first one is under interface and markups list. So this zoom fit markups when selected, a lot of the time this isn't turned on when it should be. So if I turn it off, I'll show you what the problem is. If I click OK, and what I do is I go to the markups list at the bottom. If I pick a markup, it'll take me to the page that markup's on, but it doesn't make it clear which one it's referring to. I'm not really sure that one's obvious, but some of these other ones it's not so easy. So if I turn on that preference option here under interface and markups list, zoom fit markups when selected, turn that on. When I select a markup now, it zooms in so I actually know exactly which item it's referring to. So that's a very good tool. Another one in that same area, markups list, is filtered annotation dim. If I turn this up to about 50%, what that means is when I filter the list with this option here, I can then filter my markups list by any of these categories. So I'll start with by subject. So the architect subject, I'll select that one because all I want to see is architect markups. After I select that, you can see all the other options are grayed out. So these other markups are now gray. They're harder to see, but they're still visible. That's good, but maybe it could be a little bit more clear, right? So what we'll do in our preferences here is just turn that one all the way down to 0. And when we do that, we'll do the exact same thing we did before. Click the filter list, click architect. Now you can see they're not gray anymore, they're completely missing. So we're only looking at what we want to see. We can change that to contractor now. You can have multiple going at once, so architect and contractor remarks are on there. Disable that one, turn on another one, disable the other one. You can just see exactly what you want to see, and there's no gray stuff in the background causing any confusion from other markups. You're only seeing the ones you want to filter. Sweet, go back into our preferences now, and we will go to the advanced area. So this is a good one just to be aware of. If you're working with large drawing sets, you're working with lots of data, sometimes Bluebeam can be a little bit slow in loading it because there's so much information there on those 500 plus sort of drawings. So one thing you would always want to have on is iterative draw. That means that instead of waiting for completion, which is every time you open a document, Bluebeam will load the entire document, iterative draw will load the rest of the PDF around where you're sort of working. So you can open one page without opening other pages. You can zoom in on an area, it'll load that area while you're working on it and load everything else in the background instead of loading the whole page every single time. So it'll help speed things up a little bit. At the top as well, under rendering engine, software is quite good. If you've got a better graphics card or a better computer, the hardware might be quicker. Legacy also, maybe it'll be quicker for you. It's just a matter of testing and adjusting. If you're finding it slow, select a different option. And if hardware is not better, try software, find the one that's working the best for you. On top of that as well, so under another area, I think interface, markups list, we've covered that. Under tools, and this top one here as well, so this one will not normally be ticked, dynamically set as default properties. If I leave that one off for now, what we'll see the difference is, if I go into Bluebeam, place a markup like this cloud, it's now red and looks as it looks, right? If I change the properties while I'm placing it, so if I select the tool, go to the top, change the color to green, and then place the markup, it looks a little bit different. But when I select that tool again, it places it back to its default, back to red. So if you do want to actually be consistent, you want to select this, I want to change it to green, and I want it to be green from now on. When I close that tool out, it'll go back to being red again. I don't want that. I want it to be the same every time, so I'm going to go to preferences, turn dynamically set as default properties on, so tools, markup, click OK. And when I now place that cloud, it's the default color. If I select the tool, change it to green, place the tool down, it'll be green. If I then select the tool again, it will stay green. So it actually will keep a memory of what you've changed it to. So if you are doing line work, let's say I've chosen this one, I want to add some gas lines in the drawing, I'm placing them here, placing them down here, place them everywhere else. That's exactly what I want to be placing from now on. When I place that line again, it actually will keep doing it the way that I want it to do it. It won't go back to its default. So those are the sort of cool tips I sort of found. It's worth exploring your preferences, having a look at some of these things that are available. There are a few cool little options here. If you find something's not working the same as you're used to, maybe the preferences have changed somehow. Either way, that is it for the preferences. Next up, next up is custom line styles. So drawing and using line work, applying line styles to actual whole shapes. So not just polylines and measurement lines, but full on shapes. You can customize those line styles, create your own, then you can save those line styles and actually use a cool example. We've got contour lines to sort of show you how it can come together, how it can work as a whole. Dip back into Bluebeam really quickly. Just go to a fresh page. So pretty obvious at the moment. We placed a few before, but click on that straight line. You can place one very easily that way. The other line tools available are polyline. The difference is when I click from one into another, it keeps going, so I can keep drawing. If I hold shift, it'll restrict me to 45-degree angles, and I can keep drawing a longer line. I can go to the very end and close it off, but that doesn't actually connect it. It still stays as just a line. It's not a full enclosed shape. If I use the polygon tool instead, for example, I can click and just keep clicking. If I click enter though, you can see that it appears and it encloses the shape. So the polygon has to be enclosed because it's an object rather than just a line. Anyway, with these options here, we can customize our lines, so we can choose, obviously these ones, the thickness, increase the thickness of the line, change the color. We can add a start and an end, so we can add an arrow to the start, we can add an arrow to the end or another thing to the end. There's a lot of different options you can use there. Those are the main ones, but the line style itself can also be changed. So that's with this option here, or under preferences, if you scroll down, that's with this one here. So select this and then click manage. That's where you'll be customizing your tool chests or customizing your line styles. At the bottom here, if you change it to a zigzag, for example, you can see that how it actually changes it very quickly. There's a few other ones available. These are all stock standard with Bluebeam. Create a dashed line like that. To click the manage one at the top in that window, these are sort of where you create your custom lines. This is one we are going to be using called water lines. To add a new line style set, you just click on the add button here, give it a title. For now, this is the one we're going to be adding. We're going to be modifying that one and adding lines to that. So if we do so, we'll click on cold water and hot water lines. There's a little preview of what we're aiming for. We're going to click on the modify button. What we'll then do in here is go to the line style editor. We can then click on the plus symbol to add a component. We'll do the dash. We'll then add a space. And what we'll see, we'll just stop right there for a second. That's creating basically a loop. Your line style components loop from the beginning to the end. So we're using dash space, dash space. If I add another bit of text, for example, it'll do dash space text. So at the moment we've got dash space text and then there's no gap. It's very hard to see, but there's no gap between the text and the dash because you need another space after that to complete the full sort of cycle, and that'll make it evenly spaced. So from here, for that one, what we want to do then is just, you can click on this text component and change further the properties within. So we'll change that to CW, maybe to represent cold water, or type it out cold water completely. Do either one. The spaces, you can customize the width in here as well. So we can change that to be 5, or we can change it to be 10. I think the max is sort of 30. We'll run with that for now. You can see the space is massive. Drop that back to 5. That's about fair. Change that one to 5 as well. Make sure you're doing it evenly so that it loops correctly. And the dash distance, we want that to be a bit longer, so we'll change that to 10. So those are all the possible customization options you can do. We'll click OK and then OK again and just finish that off. So when we go back down here, let's change this line to the new one we created, cold water. And it's quite tiny. Maybe if we scale it up, the line thickness, you can see it gets a lot smaller. It doesn't actually change the text size. So you just have to go back into our options again. We'll manage it. Manage waterlines, modify that one. Go back in here, select our cold waterline, modify it. Click up here, and then edit the text again at the bottom. Increase that font size. 4 is quite small. Let's go with 10. Maybe a bit big now. 8. Probably do the trick, but there you go. Test and adjust as always. You can see now that I've changed it, it doesn't automatically update. I have to change the line style and then change it back for it to actually take effect. So now we've got that line style created. The other thing you can do, that's most of the options you've got available. Let's go back in here, select a line, modify it. Go into our waterlines again, and we'll change, add a new one, call it hot water. But this time, instead of text, we're going to sort of use a symbol. So we do the same thing we did before, add some components, dash, space, and dash. Actually, hang on. What am I doing? Vector. This is what we're going to do now. We're going to select vector instead of text. Add another space just after it to complete that loop. And under a vector, what you've got here is a little sort of creation area, a little paint zone. You can kind of come up with whatever you want. We'll just come up with any sort of symbol. If you select a line here and you have snap to grid on here at the bottom, it'll snap to these little squares, and you can draw a straight sort of line from anywhere to anywhere else. Bang, bang. And create a full box. You can see that form up here. This little vector is starting from that white area and ending at the white area, and then anything that you can sort of see in the gray is being drawn further into the loop. So if these are back to back, it would sort of loop it, but it doesn't really matter what you do in the gray area as much. It looks quite strange up there. You can draw those lines anywhere you want. Let's say we turn the grid off. We can then be more freehand and end sort of wherever we want. If we choose a circle as well, we can start from anywhere. It'll create a circle from where we started going outwards. And just click that button to clear it. So we'll turn grid on. We'll create like a little circle. So we'll start with this top left corner, and drag it down to the same distance to the bottom right, so it's even. And then the padding here, you can adjust that. That's that gray area I was talking about. So that increases that spacing. If we bring it in, it'll reduce the space between the vector and the elements onto either side of it. So now we can see, even though there's a space, it's kind of overlapping a little bit with the other side, with the other items. Space that back out so it's just on the edges here like this, exactly so lined up with the very extreme edges. We'll increase our dash length again so it looks a bit more natural. And then click OK. Now if we select that one, we've got our new line style with the vector. Doesn't represent hot water too well, but just to show you how the vector symbol works, that's how you can create those line styles for anything. And just for the cool little example, I'll add a few lines in a straight line here. If I delete that one. Some ways that you can use these line styles. So I've got the bottom one, change my profile to my advanced profile. And I've got a new set of line styles available in a different profile. So I go from 0 here in the end. Line 5. Line 10. You can see I've created individual line styles that have different numbers attached to them. So I can create a quick little set of contour lines or something, for example. That's just a cool sort of way, another example of how you can use it. You can create sort of anything you want with those tools we've sort of shown you just there. Back in here. Come on, there we go. Custom hatch patterns are next. So these are, they work very, very similar to the custom line styles we were just working on. However, they just need to, well, they obviously apply to areas. They're a bit different. They apply to entire sort of zones. They need to be included in enclosed sort of shapes. So like I was showing you before, polylines. If you did a polyline in a square shape, you wouldn't be able to fill it in. It has to be a polygon or a square, something like that. We'll add a hatch to a markup. Most objects can sort of host a pattern, not line styles, not just lines, it has to be a shape. You can edit the thickness, the scale, the color, and the opacity of a H. You can then customize a hatch pattern, and you can also upload patterns from AutoCAD. So if you find some online that you find are actually quite good, you can straight away get those straight from AutoCAD, or you can, again, use the creator and create your own. Okay. So back in here, go somewhere relevant for this example. Got an empty sort of bit of floor plan here to work with. So what we'll do is, say we want to place a markup representing a certain type of flooring in a certain area that we should be showing. What I'll do is I'll go back to my old profile. See, everything changes back to how I had it, how I like it. What I'll do is place first just a rectangle. So I'll select that one. And with snap to content on, I can grab the exact corner, click and drag and grab this exact corner. Now what I want to do is show, hey, maybe I want there to be timber flooring in here, or maybe tiles. So I'll select my grid option, and it represents like how tiles should be in that area. I can then increase that scale option here. So at the top is the scale, under properties, the same things exist over here. So the scale of the hatch, scale it down to get a smaller looking grid, or all the way up for larger tiles, just to represent more accurately what you're trying to convey. Then also as well, so you can fill those colors in. Say we want to fill it with like a light red, completely overwhelming, reduce the opacity, and it'll reduce the opacity of both of them. It'll make it clear so you can see straight through it. So after you sort of got it how you want, you've fiddled with the settings, you've got the scale correct, you've got your pattern how you like it. Let's say, you know, there's something that I want to show that I can't quite yet. Like if I look at my options, I want to show over here, or maybe over this side, this little, where the hatch line is, where the roof line goes over. I want to show some concrete on the outside. I don't really have a way of showing that right now. If I draw a rectangle, oh, come on, there we go. Draw a rectangle outside here. I can fill it in, but it doesn't really have a hatch pattern that represents concrete too well. The dots are kind of okay. Maybe if I change the dots to a different color, it'll look all right, but it's not really what I want. So one thing to note just as well, actually, turn the opacity down or turn the scale up. Yeah. If I turn the opacity, I can see the drawing behind it, but it's still not very clear. Selecting this highlight option puts what you've drawn sort of behind the image. So the actual drawing behind it in the PDF can come through a lot clearer if you turn the highlight on. You can move that back up so it's 0 opacity. Turn the hatch pattern on, it'll come through still so you can see what's below it. So now customize these patterns. Click on this one here and click manage as well, very similar to before. We'll add another hatch pattern set, and we'll call it concrete. Click OK, and then we have our creator here as well. So we'll do this one plus the little plus symbol on this side to create a new pattern. Concrete type 1. And then you get this little area here. So same as before, that dashed blue line shows the extreme sort of edge of where the pattern begins. And then anywhere you go over that line, you can see that little gray line appears on the right hand side. That's where it's looping. So if I add something at the top, you can see that it appears at the bottom. So that's where it's going to be connecting. So these patterns are obviously stacked like on top of each other, next to each other to continue and become a whole region. Let's just clear it out for concrete. Maybe we want little squares everywhere, and we want those little weird CAD looking triangles. Turn snap to grid off so I can expand a little bit. Draw little triangles in here. It's very shabby work at the moment. I'll show you how it looks first. Change to a new pattern, and you zoom in. It's not very pretty. It's a bit closer to what we want, but let's see how we can make it a bit nicer. We'll go back in, Hatch Patterns, Manage. Under our concrete ones, let's modify this one so it's not as poor looking. One way you can do so is with the size option. So if we change our size to centimeter or ½ inch or inch, you get a lot more dots. It becomes a larger region, so you can do more fine details in here and it'll replicate a little bit better. Let's do the same thing we were doing before. We'll draw some little lines. Oh, correction, way too long. Draw some little triangles in. A bit of manual work to go there. Add a few dots. Click OK. Happy with that. And again, doesn't update till we change it. Change it once and then go back. And now we've got something that looks a little bit more like concrete. A little bit more. On top of that though, so that's the very basics of it. It's quite similar to those line styles. You can see the management symbols, where it's the same sort of process to get there. There's sort of less options available. It's basically a matter of straight lines and dots for these patterns. But what we can do as well is import our AutoCAD patterns to the top right. So we'll add one here. You select that. All you have to do is find it. I've got one sitting on my desktop ready to go. That's just a CAD pattern. Open that one up and it instantly loads this in. So a set of trees. Cool. Load that in. We draw another area on the outside. Bang. Select that new rectangle we've made and put a hatch pattern on there. Cool, now we've got one straight from AutoCAD. So we can pull in anything that we have from AutoCAD. There's plenty of websites with a ton of patterns on them. You can easily grab those and use these. So one thing to be aware of as well, let's say we want to cover this whole area. The flooring on this bottom floor is all the same. So we're going to do a rectangle. Let's use a polygon. We just draw across this whole thing and we want to put in pattern like timber flooring or something like that. We'll highlight it so it goes behind the drawing. I don't want that same pattern in the bathroom, but I can't just go through and sort of get rid of it. I could maybe draw over it, but it gets a bit messy. What we can do instead, a little tip, is to use areas pretty much for everything. So if I grab an area and I drag it over the same sort of zone and add a pattern to it, so many more options available. Hatch pattern, sweet. Add a horizontal timber this time. We'll highlight it so it goes behind the drawing again. And then what we want is, we don't actually want the area. We just want to use this as a shape. So what we're going to do is turn that off under this option here with show caption. You can just remove the caption. So now, whether it's an area or not, it doesn't matter. But the benefit of using an area, the good part here, under tools and measure at the top, we can do a polygon cutout and select that area that we don't want to be a part of our drawing, or as we don't want in our hatch pattern correction. So I've excluded that zone from our area, and now it's precisely selected just that bit, and I can draw a new section in for that tile. That's one of the advantages of using areas. It becomes more prevalent in like a bigger project when you've got little columns in the way or little objects in the way. Same thing sort of works here. If I take measurement, do it again, draw an area in this little zone. I don't want to include the bathroom in that area, so we can do a cutout as well. Measure, cutout. And I would sit here and do it very delicately, but let's just get it over with. It'll look mostly right in the end. And we can actually exclude that zone from our area now. So we can draw that brick pattern in and avoid just the toilet, for example. So that's a good way of going around those objects a bit quicker, save you a bit of time. You can draw the area over a massive zone and then take out the bits that don't need to have the pattern on it. And as always, you can just click the highlight button to make it fit over the top. Hey, I went back to the slide without ruining everything. Sweet. Did I miss anything? No. Cool. The last one is then our custom tool chest. Now this one's the most sort of advanced and complicated. We'll sort of go over the intro to most of it and show you some of the cool stuff. And then if you want to explore it a bit more, you can. We'll show you all the basics first. So just managing and creating the tool sets, using properties versus drawing mode, using the scale tools, making them, assigning layers to them. A bunch of that cool stuff later on as well. First thing I'll do, get out of here, go. So for these tool chests, well, one thing you often do, obviously, is markups, Bluebeam's a markup tool, right? So if we want to, let's say we just draw a bit of a comment, and we'll say timber flooring here. Let's say for your business, you want a standard sort of procedure where every single markup you do for a certain purpose looks the same, right? That's logical. You don't want people going around leaving comments that are all sort of out of whack. You don't know who's saying what. Let's say we say green means that the architect's written it. So we'll change the text and the line to green. What you can then do is obviously change like we did before. You can change that to our set on the side, but it's not really efficient. Best thing to do is to add that to a tool chest. Because at the moment, if I want to leave a comment, I want to leave a specifically green comment, I've got to select the call out button. Got to go over here, files here, and then change the color again. And it's not really efficient. You can go over here and select this markup, right click on it, and format painter. And then that'll put the little paintbrush over here. I can select this one and it'll apply those properties to this markup. But again, not ideal. The best way is to right click on it and add it to a tool chest. First, you need to have one available. For making tool chests and managing them, under our tool chest tab on this side, select tool chest at the top, select manage. And then over here, we're going to add a new one and just call it standard company markups. The tool chest itself needs to be saved somewhere. So at the moment, I'm just going to dump it on my desktop. I'm just doing a demo, but obviously save it somewhere. It's going to be looked after. Now at the bottom, we have an empty tool chest. Like these ones have properties within them. You can select this markup, right click it, add it to a tool chest, standard company markups. Select yes. Now when we select that little option here, we can drag it over and it maintains the exact same properties. It looks the exact same way. That's called drawing mode. So at the moment, it's completely copying the markup as we grabbed it. We can place it in anywhere else in the drawing and reuse it. For markups, however, we kind of want to do them custom every time. So what you do is you double click on it in the tool chest and it sort of changes. The symbol's now changed. It's now in properties mode. If I select it and drag it over to my right hand side, it's now drawing. It's not placing that markup. I can then select it, click over here, timber floor. And now it's actually maintaining those properties. So if anytime I want that exact setup, I can go over here and grab it and use it that way. All these markups as well, they can get more advanced. You can do anything you want to these. A few examples at the top. So if you wanted to, let's say we're going to do just dimensions for this floor plan. We've printed from Revit. We don't want to really add the dimensions in Revit again. We just want to get the drawings out the door, being lazy. What we're going to do is just drop the dimensions in here, take measurements, and place them from here to here. And these dimensions, they sort of look a bit weird. They don't really look how they would if they were coming out of Revit, right? So you'd have to go through and edit them, change the start line here to that end piece, and change the end to that one as well. And then change it to sort of be black so it blends in, text to black, etc., etc. Taking a while to sort of get there. Instead of that every time, I've made a few tool chests already, so for working drawings, and change this to properties mode, and I can just place that exact type of dimension that I want every time without fail. So that way I'm going over here, grabbing the correct tool, it's doing it the way I want it to. every single time instead of having to grab the properties and edit it every time I place a new one. So for these tool chests as well, they have a lot more options sort of available than just those properties. So let's say, I want to sort of use this as a drawing package. I want to place, I'm missing some furniture in these rooms. I want to add some more details to these rooms, maybe some beams. I want to do a little beam layout, something like that. What I'll do is swap over to my other profile, my advanced profile. Yeah, sure. What I've got here are a bunch of ones that I made earlier that are already ready to go. So I want to add parts of these. I can add a little cabinet, something to the rest of the drawing. These are entire shapes, so I can place them just like Revit families. So I can go through and place kitchen appliances and plan stuff like that really, really quickly. So how do you add those to your tool chest? Well, you've got to make them. So one thing you can do, let's say I just want to grab this toilet and I want to place this toilet elsewhere. I can go review, file, no, edit, PDF content, and then snapshot this content. I can grab this toilet, just Control-C and Control-V and paste that in. So I can now place that toilet anywhere. I can also right-click it, add it to my tool chest, not to pages. Add to my tool chest I've just been making. So I want to add it to my furniture one. I can now select that toilet anytime and use that in any project from now on. So that snapshot way of doing things works very quickly, but it does have a few limitations. So I can change the color with color processing. So if I select the snapshot that I've just taken, I can change it from black to red, for example, to make it look like a markup, and that's quite quick and easy. Stick that anywhere I want it to. But what I can't do is I can't sort of fill it in with color. If I change that, it does it the whole area of the snapshot, not just the shape. So to make these sort of tools the best way you can, it's better to actually draw them out and copy them. So what we'll do is we'll go back to how we were working before, start this from the beginning. Create a tool like that one. What you can do is draw that shape out. So we'll take our polygon and snap to markup on. We'll just trace it out whole way across. And the reason why you prefer to sort of do it this way and then create a library of these sort of families you can use later on is because you can customize it far more. So I can change that line color just with the press of a button over here. I can reduce that line weight so it's smaller and closer to how we want it to look. If I'd taken more care and traced, it probably would look a little bit nicer, but just to show you how it works, you can do it that way. This also works for more than just one shape, because this toilet at the moment has that line across it and I'm only able to draw one polygon. Instead, let's say we're going to do this sink. It's a bit more of a complicated one. We want all these sort of fittings to come with it. It's more than one shape, right? So what we can do is take a polygon, draw it like this, and here's a few tips for drawing ovals. I just grab the extreme edges, create a polygon. You can right click on that and convert to arc. So right click on it, convert to arc, and it actually creates that oval a lot quicker. Cool tip, so using polygon. Do that again, I'll just make a square for that inner ring. And let's say I want to do that with the tap, and grab a rectangle, grab that tap. Grab these both at once. So I'm editing them at the same time. So that's by holding shift, I can just grab the whole thing, or shift click, and shift click on that one. Now I'm grabbing them both. I can then change the properties of both, so the line color, the line weight, thin it out a bit. Then I want to select just this tap, fill it in with white so that it goes over the top of that line. And then grab them both. If I paste it over here, you can see I've got the beginning of a sort of family here. Just keep going just to finish it off. I add a bit of a circle over the top here. The outer ring of that sink. Wow. I can then grab it all at once, change the line color again, right click on it, select the option group. What that does is it puts them all together as one sort of group here. So it's keeping this as one family now. Instead of separate little components, instead of separate shapes, it becomes one sort of shape. So I can right click, add this to my tool chest, under standard markups. When I select that, I can replace that exact arrangement of multiple symbols anytime. So that way you can get really complicated with it. I'll show you some ones that I made earlier. I'm not going to sit here and slowly, meticulously draft together items in front of you all. It'd be a bit boring. When I go back to my other profile, cool examples of this are down here, like entire windows, for example, or this furniture from earlier, or in an elevation. Put it in an elevation so it makes sense. In here, so we want to add this bit of furniture in, and scale it down like this if we want to. We can fix the scaling problems a bit later. And then add that furniture in really quickly. And the reason why we do it the way that I was doing it before by drawing it out, this has been all drawn, we can change the line colors and it'll update all the lines within to match instantly. We can fill it in with certain colors. We can have a lot more like options available to us with what we can do. So that way, if you want it to just be clear, you can hover it over the top, you can highlight it so it's behind the drawing. You can do a lot more options. You have a lot more available if you draw it together and make a tool chest that way. These tools are very, very handy for quickly placing items, but as you can see, like it's becoming a bit tedious. Like if I place a door in, it's like not at the right size. I have to draw it down, whatever. It's not really what I want. I want it to be more exact. So one thing you can do is scale these tool chests as well. So what I'm going to do is place one of these doors first. And then under the options, the cogwheel, I can select the set scale option to set the scale of the tool chest as well. So I'll select a custom one and calibrate it from the top to the bottom and say that that should be 2.1 meters tall. Now, when I place these doors in, they actually come into the correct scale every time now. So it doesn't just apply it to that one door I used, it applies it to every door now that I'm placing it in here. Everything in that tool chest is scaled. Sweet. Again, kind of hard to see, so maybe I want to fill that in with white so it comes over the text and I can see it more clearly. Benefit of having it drawn. That's how you scale this tool chests. Was there anything else? We have a quick look here. Assigning a layer, yeah, that's the other tip as well. So if you're not using it already in Bluebeam, the layers tab on the left-hand side here is quite helpful. What that does is if I look at this messy drawing, I've got the engineer, the architect, and the contractor all making remarks, and it's a bit hard to see. It's all gibberish, by the way, so don't read into it too hard. If I select this option, I can turn these off and only see certain people's comments, similar to how I was filtering earlier. So one way to get the most out of the layers option is to apply a layer to your tool chests. So if I go over here for doors, if I right click on a single item, there's a little tab here called layer. I'll select that, type in doors. Now when I place that single tool from this tool chest anywhere in the project, if I go back to my layers tab, there's a new layer called doors. If I turn that off and on, the doors become visible and invisible. So it's a cool way of sort of separating that data out from your project. It'll help you, in drawings where there's lots of comments, you can turn certain things off and on if you only want to see certain things. That's the down and dirty of families of tool chests. The last thing is aligning and flipping. I promised you earlier when I added that tool chest in, correction, that toolbar profiles. If I go back to review, this toolbar I added at the very, very beginning. Promised you I was going to do something with it. So now is the time you've all been long waiting for, I'm sure, sitting at the edge of your seat. What I'll do is make this a bit more relevant. Go back to my advanced profile. Select some of these beams here, so these square hollow sections. And let's say I want to add like a quick beam layout with maybe I-beams make more sense. A quick beam layout between here and here. It's a gigantic I-beam for this purpose. Let's say shrink it down. We're using the world's smallest I-beams for our flooring. Quite strange, but see how it works for now. Just copy these ones in and have a bunch of them really shadowy and shoddily put across here. Put this one on the right hand side. What I can do is if I select all these beams at once, shift and click and drag, I can then use that toolbar, because I'm in the wrong profile now, it's not there. Go back to my good profile. Select all these beams And these options now light up and can be used. So the top one, I can align to top. I'll select that option, and now all these beams are lined up exactly with each other and from their tops. If I undo that and do it again, you can align it to the middle, and it's usually aligning it to the first one you've selected. So it's aligning to this first option here. And then as well, I can distribute horizontally. So this option here, if I click on it, bang, it'll spread them out so they're evenly spaced. So if I know the number of beams I'm putting in, I put the correct number in, and I put the one at the beginning where it's meant to be and the one at the end where it's meant to be, it'll distribute them between those locations. If I do the same thing, I drag this beam all the way to the left-hand side, grab them all again and distribute them again, it spreads them out perfectly evenly between the first and last. That's a cool little tip. The other thing that is useful, if I grab a shape like a semicircle, that's not going to work. Something like an arrow maybe, like this way. One of the other tools available in this toolbar is the flip horizontal and flip vertical. So these are pretty self-explanatory. Click on the horizontal one and it flips it vertical, it flips it vertically, back and forth over and over. So that way, if you've got something drawn properly in one direction and you need to apply it to the other side of the building, take it over here. I want it to fit in this little gap now. I can just flip it around until it sort of fits perfectly and drop it in. Yeah, so those are the tips for tool chests. Now I've got a bit of time. If there's any questions, there's a Q&A inside of inside of Zoom here. If anyone wants to drop any questions inside the Q&A here, happy to answer any at the moment. Go back to my lovely Q&A slide. I'll give it a few minutes. I'll hang around for any questions, so feel free to stick around and put those in. If there are no questions and you're happy to go, thank you for watching. That's the end. That's basically covers what we were here to talk about. So those workflows for architects and engineers. We did some customization of your profiles. We customized the Linestyles and Hatch Patterns. And on top of that, at the end, we also started looking into tool chests. So adding certain properties to tool chests and adding more advanced shapes and how you can use those things throughout the practice. Awesome. Thanks for coming, everybody. I'll hang around for any questions that come in the chat. But other than that, thanks for coming. Is it possible to distribute by set dimension of the floor joists? Could I set the internal at 600 spacing? So not exactly. I think if I wanted to do this tool here, one thing you can do is sort of do it in the reverse way, which is like, if you know the total distance you have to span and how many beams are going there, you can have it distribute. So in between each one thing you could do is take a dimension. So between these two areas, what I'll do is drop one in, measure the length from the outside of that wall to the outside of this one. So once I know this distance, I know that I'm at like 600 centers. Then place the first one here, the last one. And if you know how many beams, it'll do it for us. So for 600 centers or for 500 centers at 5,500 mils, obviously you're at like 11, so you need to put 11 in. So if you know how many, you can just put how many are correct in and then distribute it, but you can't actually set like a centers or like a spacing exactly. So no, it's not ideal in terms of actually doing a layout. Yeah, thanks. It's not ideal because, obviously, like the ideal way would be doing, as you're saying, having the actual distance between each one because you know that value, what it's supposed to be. But the best way to sort of work around that you can do in Bluebeam is to find that max distance and then just do it in reverse order. Will the recording be shared? Yes. So the recordings all go on the YouTube channel, which is going on Google and searching for things live is never going to end well. So it's Cloud X UK at YouTube. at YouTube. The YouTube channel is just cloud2k, I think, .com. So I'll find that link in a sec off screen and I'll put it in the chat for you. So all of our webinars are recorded and put on that YouTube channel. Just finding that link off screen so I don't randomly pull up something on YouTube and get myself in trouble. Yeah, so I've just put that in the webinar chat. You can find that link. It should be uploaded within, I think, the week or 2 weeks usually, this recording. So just wait out for that. How do you set the dimension accuracy preference to 1 decimal for all measurements? Yes, okay, that's a good question. So if I just zoom out at the bottom for this drawing, yeah, obviously I've been ignoring it because I don't want to fix it. It's looking at 0.83 millimeters. It's a bit ridiculous. So you can go down here and the scale at the bottom, you select that little button there. What you did is you get the pages that the scale is applied to, you get the scale you're actually working on, and the precision at the bottom is what you're looking for. So change that precision to 1 if you're working in millimeters, apply that scale, and now it removes that ridiculous decimal and actually it's a bit more accurate. We go back to what we were looking at before. It hasn't updated this page because this page is a different scale. So we just have to do that again as well here. Set that precision to 1. If you do know the scale of every page, you can what's it called? Apply it to all pages. So every page is 1 to 100. The precision will apply that to all pages. The scale precision as a default, yes and no in a way. So if I open up my measurements tab here, precision as 1 on this measurements tab will sort of apply. If I click calibrate and I use this measurement here for calibration, if I change that to millimeters and I change it to feet, inches, whatever, the precision will stay as 1. So if you've changed the precision, it'll stay that way. So if I then want to go back to meters, the precision's still 1 when it should be 0.01. It's just one of those things you have to look out for every time you calibrate. Just change the precision while you're there. Awesome. Hopefully that has answered those. Any final questions? I'll hang around 5 or so more minutes. Other than that, thanks for coming. Appreciate your attention. And again, actually, just a final closing remark for everyone who's still here. I'm so bad at PowerPoint, it's very obvious. Any other questions after this webinar about licensing? If you haven't got Bluebeam, you want to get it, marketing@cloud2k.com. Or if you have any questions about the webinar itself, technical questions, anything else, that's the same address. It's monitored by everyone. We'll get to it. So other than that, thanks for watching, everybody. Appreciate your attention.